Good afternoon, and welcome to the second session of the Barcelona Global International Council Duets. This is an initiative promoted by Barcelona Global, where two Barcelonians, one living in Barcelona and the other one living abroad, and a member of our International Council network, have a dialogue. The dialogue today will go regarding biomedicine and life sciences. To do it, we have two super experts, one in Barcelona, Josep Sanfeliu. Joe is the managing partner and president and co-founder at Asabys. And in New York, we have Victor Bultó. Victor is president at Novartis Pharmaceuticals Corporations. The session will be moderated by Judit Anido. Judit is an entrepreneur on the life sciences sector and the former CEO at Catalonia Bio and Health Tech. Thank you very much for being part of these duets. It's really an honor to have two experts like Joe and Victor. The session will take an hour, so for the first 40 minutes, we will have the dialogue between the two speakers, and then we will have about 15 to 20 minutes of questions that the audience following the session in streaming can post in the chat. Here at the Barcelona Global offices, we have some experts in biomedicine and life sciences, and we have gathered this representation of experts because after that hour of session, we will keep discussing what we will be speaking in that dialogue. So thanks again, and Judith, your turn.
Thank you. Okay, hello everyone, welcome everyone, and thank you very much Barcelona Global, Mateo and team to organize this session today, which is going to be extremely interesting. As Anna said, the objective of today is to talk a little bit about the status of the health or life science sector here in Barcelona and also a little bit in Catalonia. And also, as we want to continue growing and evolving, we will also like to see how we can do that, how we can continue improving in our ecosystem, and for that we have today two real experts here in the room, and I will introduce them a little bit later. Before that, I wanted to explain that, as Anna said, this is going to be a discussion with Joe and also with Victor about 40 minutes. Then we will have the opportunity to have some questions from the audience. We have some people here, experts from the ecosystem here in the room, but also there is a lot of people connected through streaming. You have a chat on your screen, so if you have any comment, if you have any question that you want to share with our speakers, please send them to us, and we will be happy to share with our speakers. Same for the audience here present in the room. We encourage you to really share with us your thoughts, your comments, your questions, because I think that having your views from very different people from the ecosystem is only gonna enrich the discussion today. That being said, I wanted to give, first of all, a little bit of context about the ecosystem here, the life science ecosystem here in Barcelona and also in Catalonia, because it's been an ecosystem that has been growing and flourishing during the last 15, 20 years. And I think it's interesting to share here with you some figures. First of all, I'm just going to say that obviously, as you can imagine, Barcelona is a very important location, and most part of the life science ecosystem is concentrated here in the city. About over 90% of the companies in Catalonia are here, but the figures I'm going to share with you today are mostly about Catalonia, but keep in mind that obviously when we talk about Catalonia, there is a huge concentration here in Barcelona. To start with, I wanted to share with you that here in Catalonia we have almost 1,200 companies here in Barcelona in the life science ecosystem, and almost 100 entities or centers that are knowledge-producing centers. The life science ecosystem is very important here in Catalonia. In fact, it's 7.3% of the GDP here in Catalonia. It's the second most important industry, when we talk about industries with high component in innovation, we are only after the automobile industry here in Catalonia as relevance. And we are very good in different aspects of the life science ecosystem, starting by the science. We have very good scientists here in Catalonia and very good research centers. In fact, we are very good in terms of figures, in terms of quality, and also number of publications in comparison with other leading countries in Europe. And also we are very competitive acquiring or having competitive grants or competitive funding from Europe, for example. Also, we have very well-known hospitals. In fact, we are in the top 10 in Europe and top 15 worldwide in terms of number of clinical trials in the hospitals in Catalonia, only in Catalonia. I think this is very impressive when we talk about the name of and the quality of these hospitals. But also we have a very flourishing industry here in Catalonia. We have one new company almost every week. Okay, and in Catalonia we have around 50% of the Spanish pharmaceutical companies, and in fact we have the largest ones based here in Catalonia, such as Almirall, Esteve, Ferrer, Grifols, or Uriac. Besides the Catalan or the Spanish pharma companies, we also have headquarters of global pharmaceutical companies. Here Novartis is one of the examples, but also we have headquarters of other very important companies such as Roche, Amgen, Medtronic, or B. Braun, to talk about different types of companies in the life science ecosystem. To finalize that, I wanted to share with you that these companies here in Catalonia are having about 20,000 million euros in revenues per year, and we have over 55,000 employees here in the industry. Also, important to mention that in 2020, the startups in the life science ecosystem raised 226 million euros in financing, mostly venture capital, as Joe will probably mention later on. This doubled the number we got in 2018. So as you can imagine, also COVID has put the focus on the health ecosystem as a tool to provide new solutions to pandemics or to sanitary or health crisis worldwide. But I think these are very nice numbers representing and confirming that this is an ecosystem that is growing, that has relevance in our country, but the limit is the sky, so we want to continue growing and continue improving. That's why we are here today. We are going to be talking about what are the main features, the main characteristics of the ecosystem today, but also we are going to be talking and identifying what we can improve in order to become better. And to have that, we have these two very relevant speakers today. We're going to start with Victor Bultó, because we always want to have to keep an eye into leading industries or leading companies or leading countries in the health sector ecosystem. And Victor Bultó, as Anna mentioned, is the president at Novartis Pharmaceuticals Corporations in New York, and is leading the US pharmaceuticals business. But Victor has developed his career at Novartis in the last 16 years. He has been in every therapeutic area in Novartis and has been involved in the launching of many, many products in the company. So welcome, Victor, today. On the other hand, we have Josep Sanfeliu. Joe is the managing partner, the president, and the co-founder of Asabys, which is a best firm based here in Barcelona, which is focused in the healthcare and in the life science innovation ecosystem. But also, Joe was previously co-founder of Isios Capital, where he was a partner also in charge of the medical technologies. These two firms, Isios and Asabys, I wanted to mention that are two key VC firms here in Barcelona. Probably Isios was one of the first ones focused in the health ecosystem, and they have been key in order to also develop our ecosystem, supporting and giving financing to a lot of projects and companies born here in Barcelona and born in Catalonia, which have been quite successful in the recent years, but also putting Barcelona in the picture and attracting investors worldwide to also invest in the companies here. So they have been really important to grow our ecosystem here. But let's start because we have a lot of topics to discuss today, and I want the main characters today to share their knowledge and their vision with us. And I wanted to start with Joe, because I was mentioning, Joe, you have been in the VC world for many, many years already in Asabys, at Isios, and in fact, you have invested in many successful companies. We have one example here today with Onla Therapeutics. Valerie is here today, but also, for example, Origo, that was recently acquired by AgoMap. So we have already some exit examples here in the ecosystem. And in fact, it's very interesting that besides these two VC firms, we have others. In fact, we have 9 VC firms in Catalonia specialized in the healthcare ecosystem. I think this is quite outstanding, because I think that if you look at the rest of Spain, perhaps there's 1, 2 more, but the proportions are not similar to here. And I wanted to ask you, what do you think, what are the ingredients that these VCs can find here in Barcelona that makes this location attractive to them and explains this increase in the number of VCs? And do you think this is a trend that we will observe in the future too, this increase?
Well, thank you, Judit. Thank you, Barcelona Global, for the invitation. A pleasure to be in the room virtually with Victor, good friend for many years, and also some other guests in the room I see here, and Joel Zemare, with who I co-founded Isios years ago, and he was also one of the guys coming abroad and bringing to Barcelona a lot of talent and financing. But to your question, we're here to work with Barcelona Global, to discuss why Barcelona is still a very good location for the development of nice innovation, global pharma biomedical research projects. And why are we looking at Barcelona as a place to locate companies or to project companies and ambitious projects? And a proxy to see if this is a good place for that is basically private money. Because some of the audience might just think, why are we talking about venture capital, which is my work and has been my work in the last close to 15 years. And one of the things is that private money follows talent. It's not the other way around. So when you have a city where you have money being deployed, then it means there's something behind this city, which is not only about lifestyle, it's not only about the price of the wine, it's not only about projects, it's also because there's talent that's pushing forward a great global ambitious project. So going back to your question, I think, and if you look at the data, you just mentioned a couple of numbers, but 9 VC firms based in Barcelona, most of them operating from here, manage close to $1 billion, billion euros, close to €1 billion, because if you account for the funds that Isios is managing, Asabys is managing, Alta and other colleagues in the industry, I mean, this counts for a lot of resources that go to the private industry in these small startups. And if you look at how much was raised by these VCs in the last 2 or 3 years, those billion probably are 400. So 40% of the money has been raised recently. So Barcelona started years ago, in 2000, if you wish, in the 2000s, when you guys were doing biotech early stage. But then it became a place where private money is being deployed in a very professional way, in an industry that's growing in terms of attracting private money. And Barcelona, it's poisoned for attracting this money in biomedical research for many reasons. If you look at the data that Silicon Valley Bank just published a couple of weeks ago about the data invested in healthcare globally, venture capital money has been tripling its investment globally in healthcare, in diagnostics, in medical device, in health tech, and in biopharma. If you triple that, some of that money went a lot of biopharma, which is always a big segment that attracts a lot of investment, but also health technologies, if you include medical devices and digital health. So the question would be, are we finding good assets in Barcelona for this type of investments to come along? And in the future, is Barcelona ready for the new trends, which is including digital health and other? And the answer would be yes, if you look at the indicators of additional funds coming in. It's not only about the private money that's already here by funds, it's also the investors' money from international firms that are co-investing here. Also, those, as you know from your data, has been also tripling. So triple is like the number because international funds have been coming, and looks like 2021 is going to be 50% increase in this international money, not local money, but the money coming from out also enjoying. So definitely there are the ingredients of critical mass of deal flow. There's an ingredient of a lot of reputation around the research centers and academia, talent, and also co-investors that are helping other investors to join the community. So if we keep up with this good work, good reputation, and specifically we treat talent the right way in many ways. We can discuss that later. We need to do still a lot of homework there, but this city will still be attractive to all these private money investors, which is a proxy of interest in talent.
That's very interesting. Thank you, Joe, for sharing that. And I guess, I don't know if, Victor, on your side, you have the same type of attractive items in order to decide when a international global pharma company decides to put a headquarters here in Barcelona. What are the causes for that? Are the same that Joe was just sharing with us? Is there the talent that the pharma company is trying to find? Is because the hospitals? Why is that? And more importantly, what we can do in order to attract much more global pharma companies here to Barcelona?
Well, Judit, let me start by also again thanking Barcelona Global for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here with you and with Joe and the other experts in the room. So let me maybe start with a reflection, right? And understanding how is the life sciences ecosystem different than other industries, and therefore what may be necessary, right, to differentially attract this environment. I think that there's three key factors to understand for those who are not close to the life sciences to understand this ecosystem. One is that it's a highly complex environment, right, in terms of talent. The second one is that it has very high risk. And the third one would be that we have very long development timelines. So if I develop a little bit in the 3 points, right, in terms of highly complex environments, a typical life sciences company ends up hiring highly skilled talent from 20, 30, 40 different disciplines, if you think about it, right? Take biology, take chemistry, take manufacturing, quality, take all of that. And you need all these talents to work together in an orchestrated way. So talent will be an absolutely critical space where you have to have enough scale and enough diversity of talent for these companies to flourish. So that would be the first one I would anchor on. The second one that is linked to what Joe was saying is financing, because at the end, it's a very high risk industry, right? Let's not forget that. Typical success rate of a product that is already in development is around 13%. And that's after many ideas somehow are lost in the way. That means that on average, it takes $2.6 billion investment to bring a medicine to the market, if we take pharma as an example. So you will need lots of investment that has high appetite for risk and high returns as well to be located in the same environment. And I think that the numbers that you guys have shared and that tripling of investment is just a great sign, of an encouraging sign. And the third one is, which is kind of linked, is a very long development timelines in general, right? Normally it takes around 16 years from first patent to an FDA approval if things go well. So that means that the ecosystem is quite different. And I would summarize the elements. You asked me, what would we need to attract even more, right, at scale? And I would think that there's 5. The first one is talent, as I've shared, right? Intensity of talent. How do we train? And I think we do a fantastic job in Barcelona at that and training talent. But how do we retrain? So how do we keep people coming back for their PhD, for additional degrees? And then how do we retain? And I think, Joe, you kind of mentioned it. That's one of the big, probably things that we can think of, right? Because we have tremendous talent that ends up, flying away from Barcelona for different reasons. How do we keep more of that talent in the city? The second one is source of innovation after talent, right? Do we have a research engine? How can we even foster that research engine, private and public, so that we can create an ecosystem that enables scale? The third one is funding, we've already discussed. And probably the fourth is physical infrastructure. And I'm not an expert. Maybe Joe, Judith, you're much more in tune, but what is the state of our physical infrastructure in Barcelona? Does it support this kind of effort?
Thank you, Victor. This is very good points you mentioned, and you both mentioned many times talent, right? Talent and being able to attract, retain, to train this talent. And I was thinking that one interesting thing about the healthcare ecosystem recently is that it's evolving very, very rapidly. And we see that example very clearly in the digital health space. We have been this part of the ecosystem growing very dramatically in the last years. In fact, in the last 10 years, the number of companies in the digital health space here in Barcelona have multiplied by 10. Currently, we have over 200 companies, but that requires different types of skills. And in fact, we have seen also many large pharma companies locating their digital health hubs here in Barcelona. Novartis is one of the examples, but also we can mention Sanofi or Roche. And I was wondering, is this because also they find this type of talent here? And what is the talent that is required to this emerging digital health space that we see nowadays? Joe, perhaps, or Victor, can you share your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm happy to start, and I'm sure Joe has great insights on this. I would start with the big trend, right? There's a definite move into the consumerization of healthcare, right? That's how we describe it in the sector. And there was actually a great article in The Economist this past week that described this movement. But there's definitely a move to understand better the patient as a consumer and understand how actually the biggest barrier to healthcare in the 21st century is not lack of technology in terms of, let's say, drugs or technology, medical technologies, but it's actually human behavior. And it is quite well studied that if we were to have patients using the currently existing technologies in an optimal way, meaning, physicians would use the right medicine at the right time, the right intervention at the right time, and patients will actually follow instructions in the right way, we would be saving more lives than if we cure cancer. And that's quite a bold statement. And I strongly believe, and everyone believes in the sector, that the enabler for that will be technology. So I do believe that it's poised for tremendous growth. I have some data that actually indicates in the last year, investment in health tech has doubled. The latest data I have is $16 billion VC investment in health tech in 2021. So it's a tremendously attractive sector for many reasons. Now, and I do believe that Barcelona is uniquely placed for two reasons. And again, would love to hear your thoughts, Joe, on that. The first one is that Barcelona in itself is already a technology hub, right? And that's the first thing you need to have a health tech hub. And the second is that most health tech companies, if you think about it, actually come from the convergence of two disciplines, technology and one other technology in healthcare. You don't need the 20, 30, 40 disciplines that you would need in biotech, right? It's much more straightforward. If you look at our hub at Novartis, it's actually a digital finance hub, right? So we need technology and finance, and that's all you need. You don't need the scale that maybe other health tech hubs have or biosciences hubs have. And therefore, I think it's a place where, at the starting point where Barcelona is, we can have tremendous impact. Joe, I don't know if you agree.
Yeah, definitely. COVID has accelerated all the trends that were already identified. The pharmaceutical industry, which has been basically the biggest industry around healthcare, together with obviously the salaries of the physicians and the professionals in healthcare. But if you look at the products, typically pharma has been capturing most of that activity. The only thing is that in the last years, digitalization, consumerization, as the Economist was profiling the other day, and many other trends, all this concept about a whole person step care, data-driven, payer-guided, all this revenue sharing that all the industry has been talking for 20, 30 years, patient-centric, patient-holistic, now it's becoming possible because of this. So, and has become possible because of this, and the incentives were probably not there, but COVID broke with all these incentives, and therefore, it's logic that you can see that the investment in digital health has grown as fast as Victor was mentioning. The data shows that. But for instance, if you look at the traditional market capitalization, the value of a pharmaceutical company like Novartis or competitors of Novartis, typically 3-4 times its sales. It's 200 billion plus for 50 billion sales. But you look at Teladoc, which is the #1 today digital healthcare company, who, by the way, the first non-American investment was done in Spain, in Barcelona, Advanced Medical. But this other company, which is actually the leading company in digital health, it's selling 2 billion with a market cap of 15 billion. So it's like 8 times its sales. That shows the potential on how investors are perceiving that the potential is around the corner, so you have to deploy a lot of resources there. And that also has to do with the amount of digital healthcare investors that are showing up. Some are coming from digital, typical tech investors like Andreessen Horowitz and many others in the US. Some others already had franchises like NEA that had tech and had biotech. And some others are coming purely from pharma biotech. So you see these pharmaceutical companies deploying money into digital health, both internally in the company and through their VC arms, just because digital health is going to be eventually being the companion for patients to make good decisions guided by physicians that will use technology. Pfizer was announcing the other day that they were laying off thousands of employees, reps basically. Doctors don't want to take care of their time listening to physicians talking to them physically in the hospital, visiting, and the reps are probably something that we will never hear about in 20 years. But this is a direct-to-consumer type of movement. And Barcelona, as Victor was also saying, that Barcelona has already done a lot in technology. Today is not the subject. The last Duets, I believe, was about technology with the guy Oscar Pierre from Globo and others. We already have a lot of unicorns like Wallapop, like Globo, like recently TravelPerk and others based here. So it's like a place where techie guys are coming naturally. And innovation is driving that. And if you have this pharma industry and deal flow, it looks like a natural convergence. And you see the Health Hub in São Paulo, you see the Tech City Association building a huge building for health tech. So there's something going up. But my only question would be, again, around retaining. We cannot afford having cheap payrolls. We cannot afford betting on we can pay low salaries because people go to the beach. That is not sustainable. So I think there's going to be an effort of translating some of the value into the employees to keep the talent and retaining it, because when this talent who comes here at the age of 25 or 28 have kids, develop their own lives and have ambitions, you cannot still be a bad, you don't just have a bad salary for these guys. So I think an issue that Barcelona has still a lot to do is basically better pay jobs in an industry that requires a lot of efforts academically, because all these guys are PhDs, have gone through the world, around the world, so it's something that I think Barcelona is still lagging if you compare to Zurich, or you compare to Paris, or you compare to New York, obviously. And I know the differences and the structural differences that would not allow easily to increase salaries, but to me is a weak point in the chain.
Okay, well, that's a very nice thought, because I think that also makes a lot of sense in a more global world every day. You can not only rely in being a Barcelona, very nice lifestyle, the beach and so on, to retain people, right? People can work remotely from different places, so you have really to have tools to retain them here that are there attractive. So do you think this is something that it's only driven by companies or investors, or are there other things that Barcelona, or I don't know, the context, the government can do in order to help retain this talent here?
Well, go ahead, Joe.
No, Victor, please. Victor, please, you go first.
No, I have a distant perspective, but what I can tell you is, just reinforcing what Joe said, there's definitely a war for talent in life sciences. That's a struggle that we have. If you talk to companies based in Boston, in the West Coast, that's the #1 challenge they have today. They have enough money to raise. That's not a problem anymore. But talent is in high demand, and as such, salaries are growing. They're actually a little bit out of control in the U.S., which means that there'll be more a driving force, for all the brilliant talent that we have in Barcelona to be tempted by these opportunities, right? Structurally, I'm sure there's better experts in the room, but what are the fiscal incentives that these companies will get? But how much more investment can we attract, and high quality investment? And Joe, you're better placed to address that, because at the end, it's all a matter of investment. So I fully agree with you that that's probably the number one challenge that we will have to address. Not the quality of the talent, because we've demonstrated again and again that Barcelona can create amazing talent. It has amazing universities, amazing business schools. How do we retain, after so much investment, this talent that we've built in Barcelona?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is being highly discussed and very much worked by Barcelona Global. There's a lot of work doing precisely on the tax regimes, because out of the international, in my experience, and when we talk to international, well, investors, but mostly international talent that lands in Barcelona, most of them don't understand how taxes can be structured in the way they are, because we all need to pay taxes, that's for sure. But what cannot be is that there's a difference so big in how people pay taxes based on their precedents or their... So this is not something that needs to be addressed, and I'm talking specifically about the stock option plans and this structure to incentivize talent to stay and talent to retain and talent to bring value to those companies. And then there's another topic which has to do a little bit with the retaining. Sometimes it's not only about taxes and money. It's also about considering a new trend which I'm starting to see, which is companies that, especially in the digital space, in which Barcelona can be a delocalization of expensive companies based somewhere else. So what I mean is, like, there's a lot of engineers that are willing to come here to work, even if the headquarters of the company is based in other cities, which are very expensive. So you can have talent here it's outsourced to do some of the work being done here, but not because of salary. That should not be, I'm going to stress a little bit this point, people need to come here because of a solid project that has a good balance of quality in terms of lifestyle and in terms of what you get out of being here. But it cannot be driven because this is a low-cost economy for innovation. This cannot be the case. Otherwise, they will come, they will go to the beach, and they go back.
We have mentioned, Victor and Joe, you have mentioned these very different ingredients in this discussion already. Now it seems that we have here in Barcelona. In fact, we have some success histories like Teladoc, which was the initial company formed here. You mentioned that we are tripling the investment we receive internationally to the companies here. So it is that Barcelona has the ingredients in really to be this location or this hub that attract this talent that is able to be the origin of very, very successful initiative. But one of the surveys that Barcelona Global is doing to these international members, to the International Council in the Perception Survey, it seems that the pharma or the life science sector here in Barcelona still is not being perceived abroad as this very strong, potent with potential ecosystem that is strong in order to be competitive globally. So I don't know if you, Victor, being in New York and you look with a little bit of distance to how Barcelona is perceived in terms of the life science ecosystem, how is this perception? Is the view we have from inside is right, or in the outside the vision is different? What is missing here?
Well, I think it's a different context, Judith. I think we can be very proud of the numbers that you've shared at the beginning. And yet, I like to stress one thing that I said at the beginning, is that in the healthcare, in the life sciences space, scale matters, right? And the scale matters because innovation is not a linear exercise. All of those in the room who are experts in innovation in life sciences understand that it's such a complex ecosystem that actually you need to invest time, energy, and money and be lucky and establish the right connections for a good outcome. So if you think about a hub, a life sciences hub like Boston, right, where you have around 100+ universities in the area, you have 18 big drug companies and hundreds of smaller companies, the collision of ideas, the collision and exchange of talent creates tremendous value, right? And that only comes through size. Actually, if you look at the mRNA vaccines that Moderna and Pfizer and Biotech developed, they took 30 years in the making. And they took at least 6 different groups having different ideas, starting from identifying the mRNA, let's say, mechanism, then understanding how to stabilize an mRNA molecule, then understand how to, inserted into a cell. And all of that happened in different groups that actually started talking and working with each other along 30 years. So I think the question is, how do we create enough scale so that this can happen not as an exception, but as a norm, right? And if you look at the differential size, right? You mentioned this around $200 million in VC funding in Barcelona. I mean, these huge hubs, and they're at the other extreme, like they command around $6 billion each in VC funding every year, right? That's Boston, San Francisco, Shanghai, and even the smaller ones like San Diego and New York, around $2 billion a year of VC funding, and sometimes similar investment from NIH or public companies. So I think the quality is there. I would just urge us to think about that tipping point, that scale, that would then give us, much more opportunity to innovate and create the right collisions.
Joe, what do you think? Would you agree it's a term of a scale, or do you think that we do good work in terms of selling, explaining what it's done here, the talent we have, the projects we have, the innovation we have, that this is perceived in the right way abroad, internationally?
I think there's still a lot to do because despite the fact that you've been working with all these companies and with co-investors and with the pharma industry and the medtech industry and the digital health industry, I get some surprising responses from people I talk to on the other side of the Atlantic or in Europe. It's like, oh yes, digital health Teladoc is in Barcelona. I wasn't sure about that. It's like they are still surprised sometimes, not so much in biopharma probably, but in healthcare space and innovation, sometimes we still need to do a lot of work in promoting and being a little bit proud about what we have here. I'm in R&D scale, and in my experience back years ago in the pharma industry, it was obviously that in research scale is critical because of the attrition rates and everything, but obviously there's something that we're doing well, because I don't know the data, but the data that Victor just shared, if you compare to the data that has been invested here and the numbers, the ratios that you get is of high productivity here, because you cannot compare to Boston, and you cannot compare. But despite that, there are still very nice stories. I'm not talking only about companies. I'm talking about products that were invented here by local teams, like the German Merck team developed huge anti-angiogenic drugs years ago, and many other examples of things that have been developed here. So it's a matter of scale. Good news is that we've been highly productive, because with less resources, we've done a lot. And the healthcare system in Catalonia and in Barcelona is very strong with the limited resources that we have. So imagine if we were to get scale. So I think there's a moment in which we really have to raise our hands and be proud of this industry and bringing as much as investors as we can and congresses as we can. And let's keep up with the work of being proud of sharing what we can do here, because obviously it's going to be difficult in certain areas to do something if we don't have scale. But there are niches in which we can play a role, and that we need to identify and multiply and also share, because still a perception is not yet there, especially in medtech or digital health. In pharma, it's a different story.
Yeah, we have to do this sales part a little bit better, I guess. But, we have been talking a little bit about different topics. We will continue, but I remind you that we can do your questions through the chat in the YouTube streaming, or also people here in the room. I will be soon opening this session to receive some questions from the audience in case you have some question and you have to share some thoughts or reflections regarding this topic with Victor and with Joe. And I wanted to touch a little bit now also on one very important piece in order to develop all this innovation, and it's the research centers, the universities, and the role they have in originating these new technologies. And in fact, looking a little bit on how this works in the United States, we see that these universities or research centers play a key role in really generating and putting forward these innovations. In fact, the universities are basically like a part of this very smooth engine and are working like on a daily basis, are very standard fashion with these companies or with investors or their researchers being involved in different spin-off companies as founders or as advisors or in different roles. And in fact, this is very well perceived by the institutions, the universities, the research centers. And in fact, they use that as a source of income for themselves in order to fund further research in their centers. We have also evolved a lot here in Barcelona in terms of the role the universities, the research centers play in order to bring forward this innovation. But I don't know, Victor, how do you feel? There are perhaps some key lessons or some role models that still you can teach us or you can show or we can put here or we can use here in Barcelona in order to do this mechanism even more efficient in the future?
Yeah, well, Judit, I go back 20 years when I finished. I studied chemistry at IQS here in Barcelona, and my first job was in Germany. And it was in Germany in a joint venture. It was 50-50 Henkel and the university, right? And so we had two co-CEOs. One was the academic lead. It was a professor at the university. The other one was from Henkel. And that company had a very strong vision that every development had to be focused into helping Henkel very closely find, potential commercial solutions to the problems they had. And I think that's kind of the key. And that's how most of the labs that we've worked with, have been successful, is because there's a strong alignment into the final objectives. Of course, much earlier in development, normally as academia is much early on, but there's a very strong alignment. And then there's a blurring of talent, right? There's a strong flow of talent from the company to the university, from the university to the company. And I think as much as we can reinforce that by having joint objectives, the better. And I know it's happening a lot in Barcelona. I guess the question is, again, how do we foster that even more, right? How do we have not only companies from Barcelona investing in research in Barcelona, but what needs to happen, and I'm sure there's experts in the room much better placed than me to help us assess that question, but how do we become attractive for a company based in the US to invest in a lab, in a research lab in Barcelona? That to me is the question we have to crack.
And perhaps we can later on discuss with the audience because we have here, for example, Laia from Valdebron Research Institute. Perhaps she can share her thoughts. What I would like to know, what do you think, Joe? Because, and I remember in the past, you and me even talking with the research center in order to be able to transfer innovation into a spin-off context. Things have changed. I think we have evolved very much. But where do you think we are now? And what would you recommend to these universities, research centers, in order to make more efficient translating these innovations into real solutions for patients and for the society?
No, I think there's been a lot of advancement in the public-private collaboration in this regard. I think also has to do a lot with a cultural approach by the people behind the organization, because I think after the science law, la ley de la ciencia, I think back in 2010, I believe, things started to change in the right direction, where the concept of privatization or collaboration between public and private institutions, private money and public institutions, was better solved. There were, however, some conflicts that still are there, which have to do probably with the culture of the institution. So I think that some institutions have made a great move towards a better management of the tech transfer, of the collaboration with private investors and private companies, but still we have certain institutions that need to change, but not because of the law or just because of it's just a matter of the trends that were, or the inertia that was there for many years, which is how Spanish research started, and now we need to still work on that. Probably international talent and investors are going to make that best practices that you can see in other places in the world can be incorporated and let's say generalized. One of our last investments has been a spin-out from Instituto de Recerca Biomédica, IRE. Ona was also part of that work. InBrain, which is a graphene-based autonomous spin-off from medtech in neural diseases. I have to say my experience is nothing compared to what I had to do in the past. We had to do some tech transfer. But there's many other things that need to be addressed, which sometimes have to do more with exposing the professionals behind the institutions to the issues rather than institutions, because we have the green light already, I think.
Very good insights. Thank you very much, both Joe and Victor. I would like perhaps to open to any questions coming from the audience. Anyone wants to share any comment, question? Don't be shy. This is a great opportunity. And perhaps you can say your name and also your position.
Okay. So yeah, Joël Jean-Marais from Issues Capital. Yeah, I just wanted to comment on what needs to happen, what can be done, and I think this is, first of all, I agree with what has been said. The evolution. When I landed here 10, 12 years ago, coming from Switzerland, knowing the Swiss ecosystem, it was kind of virgin terrain, to say the least. 10, 12 years later, I think it has changed dramatically. So this is, point number one. We should be proud, as Joe was saying. But scale matters, as Victor is saying. Scale really matters, particularly in innovation and R&D. So this has to be inevitably a multi-pronged, multifaceted approach. That means we need more universities, but you cannot put 10 universities in 10 years from scratch, obviously. So we need to be smart. But there needs to be smart ways how to slowly increase scale. But we should be proud of what we have, and the trend is positive. So in that sense, I think we are on the right direction. And elements that could help, for example, and I'm now coming from the VC angle, is super success stories. And this has multiple implications. I'm talking about 500 million upfront payment for acquiring a Barcelona-based company. That's what we need. Why? First of all, it creates role models for those scientists that are in institutions that could be illuminated by this. Second, it creates kind of a landmark deal, and then suddenly you're in the map, and then US VCs want to eventually start scrolling what's happening here, right? And by the way, there's a trend of US VCs investing more in Europe, not only in Barcelona, but in Europe in general, because Europe is more productive, less expensive, and to respect to talent. And I don't know, Victor, if you agree with that, but I think employees are more loyal. We have invested in Boston a number of times, and it's a mess. It's a mess to retain people. I mean, really, so it's really dollar-driven. And even if you treat the employees really well, it's dollar-driven. Here we have an extra element of culture, of the European culture, the sentiment of family, that together with a decent salary, that is an absolute must. I agree, Joe. But we have this fortune that I feel in Europe, employees are more loyal. So anyway, going back to my point, lots of things need to be done. Elements could help, like very nice success stories. But I think we're on the right track.
Yeah, very nice reflection. I think that we are lucky that we are starting to see this kind of success stories. We have Sunnyfeed recently, Origo. In my case, Mosaic Biomedicals itself, it was also a success story. Although sometimes you cannot explain as much as you would like in order to put this on the map and really attract people internationally. But I think we are seeing in the last years more and more examples of success stories, and I think as we mature, hopefully we will see these examples increasing and being much more competitive, and larger numbers that will be really, really appealing to attract talent, and more innovation here. But we have been talking about the scaling up, and I wanted to touch on another scale-up version of this because I think one of the other items that perhaps I would like still to see evolution here in Barcelona is scaling up the size of the pharma companies or the life science companies we have here that were born here, right? Because we have examples such as Ferrer, Grifols, Almirall. These are interesting companies which have a significant size. These are mid-sized companies which are succeeding internationally, working abroad, acquiring companies abroad, and so on. but still we don't have like a Catalonian or Barcelonian Novartis, right? Which is a completely different size of company. What it would take for Barcelona to start having this type of companies based here? What is missing is a term of maturation of the ecosystem, or are there ingredients that we need in order to also have these large size, really global companies here born in Barcelona? Joe, what do you think?
Well, if the critical mass comes, access to global financing, it's still a big question mark for most European companies, not only Barcelona. So access to capital markets in a global way. For some reason, we are still now lacking the access to these financings. You have to probably look at the US markets to grow in scale and remain independent, because otherwise the only way to succeed for your products to get to patients is basically to sell a company, to let Novartis distribute it, which is also nice, but sometimes we need to make it happen and need to make it big. We've seen that lately with this trend of SPACs, which for the non-financial audience is just a vehicle in which you can access public markets in a different way. And this has come recently. This might be a chance. But again, it's a problem of the European market still not being able to cater to deliver financial opportunities to these promising companies. Another question I have is, and it's a reflection, spontaneous, but is the world going towards big, huge organizations? Is it going to be franchises? Just take an example, music. Are we going to see franchises around Aerosmith and Bryan Adams and Coldplay anymore? It's going long tail thing. I don't know if research is going to be a long tail thing in 20 years or 30 years, where you will have very small Novartis and very small, and all this ecosystem will be connected in a different type of value chain distribution, in which digital, medtech, sensors, drugs, patients, hospitals, governments, payers will make all part of this system, and I'm not sure about it. So how sustainable this huge organization type of thing is gonna turn out. Look at the banking in 20 or 30 years. What are we going to see? Big banks? Are you sure about that? So I don't know. It's just a question.
Well, Victor, I think this is a good question for you, because we have seen some mergers also in the last years between significantly large pharmas. Is this going to be a trend? Are these large pharmas still going to exist in the future? What's going to happen? What do you think?
I think it's not an either-or question. I think both ecosystems, Joe, if I had to predict, both will probably coexist. You will need an ecosystem of smaller companies, more agile, right? Focus on research, much more focus on research. And you still need scale, critical scale in certain other areas. So the scale will either come through aggregation as a company or aggregation through the funding. You will still need to have disaggregation. I strongly believe that scale is critical here. Now, to your question, Judith, and how we could develop that scale in Barcelona, one question that I have, and maybe a little bit provocative, and I really don't have an answer, and I haven't thought too much about it. But if you look at most of the big pharma companies across the globe, take Novartis, for example, they come from the subsequent fusion of companies that actually were geographically quite close, right? Novartis is the fusion, the synergy of Ciba, Geigy, and Sandoz. They were all in Basel, right? And that has happened with many, many companies. The question is, what is different about the Barcelona ecosystem, where we have all these companies that you've mentioned, right? Almirall, Ferrer, Grifols, Uriac, Ferrer, and they've all remained fiercely independent, right? And I'm just wondering whether there's some insight in that fact, because that's how other environments that are not as, let's say, innovation heavy have been able to scale up, and it's proven to be quite successful for them. So I don't know, Joe, you did work for one of these companies, and I don't know if others in the room have an insight, but I've always been very curious about that stark difference. This doesn't happen in other places that I know of. I remember this discussion with you in a boat years ago in Costa Brava. I mean, because you've been always asking this question to me. It's like, why the hell is this? I don't know. Barcelona Global can have another duets on how family businesses are run around the world in all industries, and what makes family business in Barcelona different than family businesses in Frankfurt. I don't have any theories,
But it's a paradox. It's a big paradox that you have so much talent in separated individual cells that don't talk to each other. It's like strange. Yeah.
Very interesting.
Question, Judith, sorry. If you look at all the other big companies that have emerged from other ecosystems, like you take Celgene, Gilead Science, Alnylam, Moderna in the pharma space, they've all kind of grown from scratch, but they have one thing in common, is that they have a very strong presence in the US market. They service the US market very effectively, and that continues to be the largest, highest margin, highest price, and highest growth market that we know. So the question as well is, I do believe that in order to reach scale, we need to have companies that can service the US market from Barcelona. And I don't know how we bridge that, but I think as long as these companies retain a predominantly European focus, it's going to be very difficult to achieve that kind of scale. And that's a very US-centric perspective. But
I think here in the audience, Joel can mention that.
No, I was thinking about how precedents. First of all, I mean, the pharma business here in Spain is, the innovation component is very small. Hence, it's very difficult to be a global player without true innovation, even if you aggregate them. The therapeutic areas are very different, and then on top of that, they're family-owned. So it's kind of really, really difficult. But I think of one example that, I like to think big and that things are possible. Actelion. Actelion was an asset that Roche didn't want, left it away very cheaply, and it was 30 billion company acquired. And that happened with, Jean-Paul Clausel, one guy, his wife, and a few others, started that company, got venture capital, and made it to a 30 billion company. So it is possible. It is possible. Mm-hmm. The other thing is, would the pharmas here be able to spin out some stuff in order to, do something similar and get an equity stake? There's different models here. Mm-hmm. I don't think they're even innovative in that perspective even. So it's a bit difficult. But it's possible. I mean, again, Actelion is a really, really good example that a big company is possible to make no matter where. Yes, they were in Basel, and the talent there was highly dense. That's true. But I want to think big, and I want to think that this is possible.
Absolutely. Why not? Right? Well, it's only 3 minutes to finalize the discussion today. I don't know if there is any additional comment, question from the audience that,
Yeah, well, thank you very much for the organization. I think it's a very interesting talk. And, it's a fact, and McKinsey has already published that there are two disruptive forces. One is the elderly population, and the other one is the digital. And I would like to know, what do you think that will affect to the life, our science healthcare system? Because Joe said some minutes ago that in 20 years, maybe we won't hear the word sales rep. And nowadays, the sales reps are the highest cost in my P&L. So how do you foresee this in the digital and the elderly population?
Well, if you think about elderly today, it's a different elderly. The elderly population in 20 years will be us. So we will be using cell phones and other types of technologies. So I think that it's unstoppable. I'm not that super expert. I just see companies in digital health that propose things that basically have this concept of the concierge health that comes along with you and just helps you in a very seamless way. Reminding you we have a company that was just reimbursed by the German government as a therapeutic digital drug, which is for GI, inflammatory intestinal diseases like IBD, etc. And this is basically a set of diet, reminders, gamification, and exercise, and mental exercises. So it's like playing with the app. We've shown and proved in front of the German agency that it's better than the drugs that are available, because there are no therapy for this, but there's products to treat symptoms, but not the illness. So I think this will be the case. Obviously, elderly, us, when this comes, we will be tech savvy, because we will know how to use a cell phone, but I'm not an expert. That's what the companies are telling us, and that's what we believe investing in this industry.
Yeah, I know, Joe, I would just add two quick things, and I know we're on time. One is that it will be the only way, technology will be the only way that we can treat that patient population at scale, right? The GDP investment in healthcare, in the US, it's already 18%, in Europe, it's 10%. It will not be able to expand much further. So we'll have to find efficient ways to treat these patients, and treat meaning in the broader sense. And today it takes 10 years to train a physician. Right, we will not have that. We don't have that luxury in 10 years, 20 years from now. We will need either many more doctors or much more efficient ways of treating patients. So I don't have any doubt regarding that as well. Now, the one watch out, the one challenge is that today all these solutions, Joe, are fragmented. They're owned by different companies with different technology platforms. I like to believe that this will explode really as a sector once we have a common platform to connect all these needs, because patients do not only have one disease, right? In most cases, they have several diseases, several conditions, and they will not go to the 10 different platforms to treat them. So whoever finds a way to create a meta platform that aggregates all of that, I think will have the key towards that acceleration.
Thank you very much, Joe and Victor. I think we are running out of time. I want to also thank Barcelona Global again for organizing this event today, and all the audience here and also across the screen. Just to wrap up, I will perhaps highlight 3 of the items that we have been repeating a lot of times during the discussion. First is talent. We need to attract talent, train talent, retain talent, and for that it's important financing, either private financing, capital markets, in order to, third, scale up these companies and also the numbers of investment we are getting to get this innovation in the market. So I would think that these 3 things, talent, financing, and scaling up, has been 3 of the key items that we have been repeating today as key items in order to continue growing and evolving the life sector ecosystem here. I think that's all for today. I don't know if, Mateo, you want to wrap up, close the session, say something?
You asked me. I was not thinking on that. Thank you very much, Victor, Joe, and Judith. It's been a pleasure, but it's also a sign of time. So we have someone from Barcelona in a top position worldwide in the US. That's a guarantee of the future. We have someone from Barcelona that did it and scaled it up and sold the company, and that's also a warranty. And we have someone from the finance world, from the VCs, that is really helping the ecosystem to grow. And as you mentioned, and here in the room, those you cannot see, we have all the investors, we have lawyers, we have researchers, we have startups, and we have hospitals. So this is the right ecosystem, and not many cities may have the chance to be good, at least, on technology, on life science, on logistics, on chemistry, on automobile, on tourism, and that's interesting, and that's Barcelona. So thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, and thank you everyone, and see you soon. Bye-bye.